The recent announcement of the release of 894 children from the civilian joint task force who had been working as child soldiers has created a consciousness and an awareness that a lot of Nigerian endorsed militia who are tasked with fighting terrorism all across the country use these children. While that may sound disgusting, appalling, this is a situation that is prevalent because more than 1,000 other children have been involved in this, have been released, and there is a possibility that other child soldiers are still trapped in this situation. On Rich Course today, we are looking at the effect of arming children. Do they become security threats? How do they become security threats? And what can be done? Why did it take UNICEF to have to get these children released? And what is the Nigerian government doing about this? My name is Gloria Oje Emode. And to have this conversation with me right here in the studio, I have Abiodun Baiwu. She is the Executive Director of Global Rights. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, we have our security expert in the studio in the person of Amechi Nwokolo. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Abiodun, you know the situation all too well. You're very familiar with this. Give us more information on what's going on. How come children under 18, basically, Nigerians under 18, have become soldiers fighting terrorism in northern part of the country, and the Nigerian government is aware of it?
When children are not in school, they're automatically treated as adults. They're expected to, in times of peace, be engaged in work, and in times of war, work along with the adults in the community to maintain peace or to escalate violence. And so what's happened in the north has always been with the knowledge of the government. The other part is that Nigerians are largely undocumented. Most Nigerians will leave and die undocumented. Most Nigerians do not have social security numbers, they do not have birth certificates, and when they die, do not have death certificates. They are not accounted for living or dead. Then how then do you begin to monitor children in crisis?
Interesting. Amechi, children, why? Is it that there are no young men? What is the rationale behind recruiting children, arming them, and then putting them in conflict situations?
Automatically, when this thing started and the so-called civilian JTF was formed, it behoves that those children find their way, and the government even find their way, because I know that the Borno state government is funding some of the activities of this civilian JTF, and they know that the so-called whosoever they are the leaders of that group are attracting and recruiting these little kids that are going over. For them, they believe that if this is a kind of providing job for these children, not knowing that you are creating another problem for the society, for the Nigerian state. It's been there and everybody kept quiet. It was as if we did not even know the impact, the social impact, the security impact of all recruiting children like this into a conflict environment.
Let's talk about this impact, Abiodun. You know this too well. Let's just list it out, because even sitting here as a mother, I can imagine all of the things that could go wrong with arming a child or putting a child in a conflict situation. Some of them are even known to be sex slaves. Some who have opened up to talk about this. So what are some of those impacts on these children?
First is the psychological impact on children and on minds that are not fully formed. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a disorder that is also very akin to children in conflict and children associated with conflict. And children having to relieve what they've gone through in the years of carrying arms or being associated with arms carrying. The other part that, well, there's been some conversation on largely in the Northeast is the stigma that they also suffer, particularly the girls who have served in sexual capacity to the people who are involved in conflict. People have often thought that the girls serve only as sex servants to Boko Haram, but that they're girls who are willingly associated with the civilian JTF as well and minister to their sex needs, cook for them, and then generally keep the domestic front for them. They're the children who carry arms and have become akin to the ideology that violence is acceptable, and defining their own rules have become more violent. Generally, what we've bred is a violent society.
A violent society. I mean, let's talk about the fact that these children could be security threats, because that's really what has been popping up. One of the reasons that, got this conversation going. You have brought in about 900 children out of the civilian JTF. Now you want to integrate them into the major society, into the main society. These children are not children anymore.
Yeah.
What kinds of security threats could they pose, Amici?
These children, later on, some of them have access to weapons now, to guns and all that. They know where they can readily get gun, ammunition, and use now. So later on, these things are going to now pose its own kind of threat. Maybe to join other groups, maybe as other types of criminal gangs that will be unleashed on the nation.
We're looking at banditry. I mean, this is a possibility for these kids as
to
well.
Join whosoever group that suits them as they now, I won't say as they grow up, because they're already grown up without getting to the age. So these are big threats. And what else? Other clandestine groups may want to recruit them because they have the technical know-how in criminality now.
Couldn't this be helped? Because, in the earlier conversation we were having, you said there's a dearth of young men in the northern part of this country because of the violence. Some of them have affiliated to the terrorists. They've, many of them have gone with the terrorists. So the number have been killed, and a significant number have been killed. So it really couldn't be helped in a situation like this, that children have to be recruited. And what does it say for a government that knows about this but pretended they didn't? Is the government that helpless that any which way to end terrorism is acceptable, the end justifies the means?
We expose them in the first place. And when we say government, let's not just hit the blame on people we've elected into office. We as citizens failed to hold them accountable. We failed to occupy the office of the citizen. We're as culpable as they are. How do we begin to mend our ways? The banditry has happened because a few politicians equipped in past elections young people with guns, with weapons. The question is, after elections, how do we mop these things up? These guns, these weapons, these light weapons and ammunition have gone into society. And we've created an economy of violence.
I think we need, whether it's ethical revolution, we need people have called for an armless revolution, because I don't see the government, that is in quote, those that are in authority or the rulers of Nigerian state, doing something as possible as now or tomorrow to change this thing.
I say a big thank you to you, Abiodun Whitebayo, for taking our time to talk to us, and Amici Nwokolo, thanks for talking to us. This is a conversation that requires all of us to have an input, because they may not be your children, but if you're not careful, they may come around and hurt your children. So they need to be protected as much as possible. Give us your comments on the comment section of this video. My name is Gloria Oje Emodi, and you have been watching Root Cause.